Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vedyadravitam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this evening we start the 16th chapter, Divine and Devilish Estates. A fascinating chapter. Divya Asura. I think it was Saint Augustine who said, every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. So these are not black and white mind states. If we're honest, we have the potentiality for the divine and the demoniac within us. Whole range of human experience. We've done it all over lifetimes. As we go through this list, these are qualities of head and heart and action that it's of value for us to look at and cultivate. Punya and papam. Punya means merit. Papam is usually translated as sin. In the exoteric language, punya, something that's meritorious, is doing puja, doing an act of generosity during the week, staying clean. Papam is touching a dead body, brushing up against an untouchable. I would invite us as yogis to redefine these terms. Punya is anything that brings peace to the mind. Or we can say anything that brings us closer to the love of other people and the love of God. Papa is anything that agitates the mind. Or we can say anything that stands in the way of my love for God or my love for other people. And that way we get out from underneath what I call a juridical approach, like jurisprudence. It's not like cosmic laws. That's breaking the law. This is okay. That's breaking the law. This is okay. You know, that we start then to fudge. Well, this is almost a sin, but not quite. As my father used to say, there's a fine line between the heinous crime of tax evasion and the manly art of tax avoidance. Try to find where I'm not breaking the law. So we don't want to approach punya and papam, these divine and devilish estates, with that kind of a juridical approach. There's one commentator on the Yoga Sutras who has said that the yamas and niyamas, which are another map for this sort of thing, who says they all boil down to ahimsa, non-injury. Non-injury, non-harm for others, but also non-injury, non-harm for yourself. So with these subtler ideas, one last point. It is of no value for us to use these lists to check out other people. Always. We can only do our own yoga. And what other people do is, in the end, between them and God. Any thoughts on this before we proceed? Okay, let's get into the chapter.
The blessed Lord, Sri Bhagwad Vacha, Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir, Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi, Danam Damascha Yakyascha, Swadhyaya Stapa Arjavam. The blessed Lord said, fearlessness, purity of heart, steadfastness in the yoga of knowledge, almsgiving, control of the senses, sacrifice, study of the Shastras, and straightforwardness.
So there's follow the second, are they taken together?
It's not here, but it's a ... so it's an ellipsis.
Yeah.
We could finish the second one.
So do the second verse and then we'll take them all together and go through each one.
Okay. Ahimsa satyama krodha astyaga shantira paishunam daya bhuteshwaro nutvam martavam rarichapalam. Harmlessness, truth, absence of anger, renunciation, peacefulness, absence of crookedness, compassion to beings, non-covetousness, gentleness, modesty, absence of fickleness.
So let's start looking at each one of these things. These are the divine attributes that Gita suggests that we cultivate. Remember, we talked about how Gita teaches on 3 levels. The most basic is what we call a Dharma Shastra. It gives us suggestions for behavior and qualities of head and heart that inform our behavior. We can identify with Arjuna, essentially with the subtle body, the universal yogi, developing the qualities of a fit student. And we can also identify with Krishna, What Krishna says is true is about him, is true about the self, you and me. So this is teaching at that very basic level. So let's go through this list. First idea of the first verse.
Fearlessness.
Yes. How do I develop fearlessness? Well, ultimately, only knowledge of the self will give us fearlessness. But we have tools that help. The basic cause of fear is living in the future. When I spin out on what I think is going to happen. So the basic tool for releasing the mind from fear is on a daily basis. Make the decision to turn my will, my life, my work over to Krishna, to the care of God. How do we deal with fear? Fear and faith cannot exist in the same heart. Lord, my life is in your hands. I give it all to you. And if there's a particular fear that afflicts us, fear of criticism of other people, or fear of the boss, or fear of financial insecurity, fear that I'm going to get sick and die, we can say in the morning, we can pray, God, I turn this over to you. Relieve me of my fear. Direct my attention to what you would have me do, who you would have me be today. And this isn't a kind of prayer we just do once. If fear is a troublesome klesha, affliction, we pray about it every day. Now listen carefully. Prayer doesn't change God. Prayer works. Prayer changes the one who's praying. And so I see that it changes the way I pray. I quit asking God to be Santa Claus. Give me what I want. Give me what I want. And I take on the prayer of surrender. God, I offer myself to you. This is, for those of us who are still ego identified, a practical tool to begin to free the mind from. Any thoughts on this? Next idea.
Purity of heart.
Yes. Now, when we talk about purity of heart, we don't mean goody feelings and thoughts as opposed to nasty old feelings and thoughts. Purity here means fewer thoughts and feelings. The yogi endeavors to cultivate a quiet mind and a heart free from struggle. We also practice what we call titiksha. Who remembers what titiksha is?
The forbearance?
Forbearance, yes. The capacity to endure the vicissitudes of life without the need for redress or revenge. I went to the symphony today with a friend, and we were talking about the difference between ahimsa, he happens to be a practicing Buddhist, and the Hammurabi Code, which is the basis of so much of what happens in the three great Semitic religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Hammurabi Code says eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It's rooted in revenge, punishment. But the yogi returns good for evil. Why? This breaks the cycle of karmic responses. I think it was Gandhi who said, if everybody continues to do an eye for an eye, pretty soon the whole world will be blind. Somebody's got to stop and practice some purity of not returning eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but return good for evil. Next one.
Steadfastness in the yoga of knowledge.
Yes. So I tell people, I've been a crappy yogi. No question about it. I've gone down how many dead-end pathways, not been particularly effective in my practice. But I can say I've been steadfast. 48 years now. Long time. Every day, no matter what happened yesterday or the day before, I get up. Today, I start as a yogi today. I place moksha as my goal today. And if I forget, and it's noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the neat thing about yoga is you can start your day over. Keep on, keeping on. Be steadfast in the path of knowledge. In an earlier chapter, Krishna has said, my devotee is never destroyed. Next one.
Almsgiving.
Yes. Now, we talked a bit earlier about the fear of financial insecurity. In the Jewish tradition, we have a practice called tithing. And one of the places it's talked about is in the book of Malachi in the Hebrew scripture. If I can remember the quote, where God says, bring unto me your tithes into the storehouse, means 10%, and prove me now herewith that I will not pour out a blessing upon you, pressed down, shaken up, and overflowing, such that you will not have room enough to contain it. We call this spirit dana, spirit of generosity. Usually nowadays, dana, it's a Buddhist term meaning you give money to the teacher. Or we think of Guru Dakshina. I'm paying for class. He doesn't charge, but I'm paying for class. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is developing the practice, the spirit of generosity. Money is not a thing. Money is nothing but stored labor. What it is energy. And what it needs to do is flow. This doesn't mean, oh, Jim's telling me I should buy lots of stuff. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if we begin to develop the habit of giving money or goods, listen carefully, with no thought of return from the person or institution to whom you're giving. In time, your fear of financial insecurity will leave you. Now, no amount of zeros in your income will free us from fear. Only this deep understanding that there's always more than enough. And we deeply learn this by practicing generosity. When we look for opportunities to give with no thought of return. Now, I'm not saying being stupid. You need to learn to give prudently within what's appropriate at your particular income and expenses. But play with this. Begin to experiment with this idea of the practice of generosity, of almsgiving. Any thoughts on this? And if you deeply understand karma, it'll make perfect sense.
Hi, Jim. You mentioned it's not about money, so it's just about the act of giving my time, my energy, my whatever, without any thought attached or return to it. So don't expect anything in return. Like, don't even let that thought populate.
Well, when you go to work, obviously it's transactional.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that. Again, the Hebrew scripture says a man is worthy of his hire. But that doesn't mean outside of the workplace, or it could also be within the work environment. You learn to practice this giving generously. And the classic triumvirate that we normally talk about is time, talent, and treasure. Those are the ways in which we practice almsgiving or generosity. You give of your time. It may be going to a food bank, spending time serving the poor. Talent. If you're a web designer, go design a web for a nonprofit that you feel strongly about supporting. Treasure. Give money to the symphony or to the American Civil Liberties Union, or a university that you have graduated from. Or a person on the street, a homeless person. But this idea of giving is really important. It's interesting. Downstairs from me is a restaurant, and it's run by this delightful Persian fellow. His name is Amir. And almost every night, he gives leftover food to the homeless. Puts it in, little take-home packages and gives it away. He just has that spirit of generosity. He's always been successful as a businessman. Is this clearer for you, Atik?
Yes, Jim.
All right, next idea.
Control of the senses.
Yes. So, yoga invites us to develop the intuition, my sense of rightness. So, in a quiet mind, I get the guidance. Go here, do not go there. Frequently in the beginning, yogis will confuse that with the indulgent part of the mind. I call it the inner 2-year-old. I want ice cream. No, I don't want to eat my broccoli. And we can be tyrannized by the indulgent part of the mind. So way back in an earlier chapter, Krishna had talked about attaining to yoga rudha, mounting the steed of the mind. A rudha is a riding term. Ashwarudha means to get on a horse. So what we're talking about here is my willingness to do anything for the rest of eternity, my willingness to do without something for the rest of eternity. So I have that samadrishta from that place. Now, check out your sense of rightness and do as you will. But the yogi learns to not be tyrannized by the addictive part of the mind. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Sacrifice.
Yes. Sacrifice doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to fast all weekend. Sacrifice means to make sacred. The best of all sacrifices, what we learned in the 4th chapter. Give everything, do everything for the Lord. Make every action one of prayer. And by and large, the most painful position of the mind is, how am I doing? What do they think of me? Am I okay? I'm not getting my needs met. I'm not getting what I want. And yoga says the way out of that is to other center the attentive faculty. Serve. Go help another person. Serve the society. Next idea.
Study of the Shastras.
Yes. So, we can read all sorts of spiritual books. and get all sorts of spiritual ideas. But in yoga, our primary source material is the Shastras. Now we have the the karma kanda section, the action portion, the ritual portion of the Vedas. You can do that if you wish, if you're a religious Hindu. But most importantly, the jnana kanda, the knowledge portion, the knowledge and the practice behind it that we find in the Upanishads, which then informs the prakarana, the workbooks that we take up. But that's our ultimate authority. So continuing to soak the mind in the Vedanta, reveling in the halls of the Vedanta, our swadhyaya, our own study of the scriptures. Next one.
Straightforwardness.
Satyam, yes. Living a life of integrity. At the surface level, don't lie. Don't steal. Don't cheat. But at a deeper level, learning to not have a compartmentalized, disintegrated personality. I'm this way with these people, and then I'm that way with other people, etc. Letting go of our secrets, God. So I have more of a sense of a unified personality. I'm the same person. This is me. And part of it is self-honesty. In the mouth of Polonius in the play Hamlet, it's actually meant to be much of a joke, but it's still very true. Polonius says, and this above all, to thine own self be true. And as the night follows the day, thou canst not then be false to any person, any man. So this straightforwardness, being direct with people, not being obtuse, is what's suggested. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Harmlessness.
Yes, ahimsa. I think almost all of these things that have to do with character can be boiled down to that. Non-injury, non-harm to others and to ourselves. Now, is this world ready for the principle of non-injury? I don't know. But we as individuals can take up that practice. Giving up the need to point out to people their flaws, the need to punish people who have hurt us. That can get so subtle. I'm not talking to so-and-so. Why not? They hurt my feelings. In other words, I'm punishing them. Bringing up things from the past. Do you remember when you said blah, 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 blah? We punish people. or we punish ourselves. Oh, I'm such a terrible person. 10 years ago, I did this. I will never forgive myself for it. Gotta let all that go. Non-injury. Not harming ourselves or other people. But don't I have a right to be angry if someone cheats me? You can do whatever you want. Master Jesus, speaking to this principle, return good for evil. Next one.
Wait,
Yes.
Jim, I have a question about ahimsa. Sometimes I think I practice ahimsa out of fear.
Fear of what?
Well, the other person, the confrontation with them, confrontation.
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge your willingness to be very honest with yourself.
Thank you.
But one of the things that I would advise us all to pay attention to, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The world judges us by our actions, whereas we frequently judge ourselves by our intentions. So I get it. You may be practicing ahimsa out of fear. But the fact of the matter is, if you're practicing non-injury, that's probably a wise thing to do. You know, I'm not sure the antidote is to start screaming and yelling at people. Now we went back to how does one become free from fear? Give that to God. If you know you have that klesha, I'm a fearful person, I'm conflict averse. Krishna, I give this to you. Give me courage. But I still think it's a good idea to practice ahimsa. I don't know if that's useful.
It is, Jim. Thank you.
So I was talking with someone last week, and we were talking about karma. And he says, well, I'm inventorying my feelings. And I said, your feelings are not what it's about. What does the word karma mean? He couldn't give me a definition. I said, I'll tell you. In Sanskrit, the word karma means action or work. Do you have children, Somya?
No, I don't.
But I'm sure you have friends who do.
Yes.
So if they are like any other mother I've ever known, you've got a 2 or 3 month old baby and it's been crying all night long. What you feel like doing is throwing the damn thing out the window. But
True.
your action is you walk with the baby, you comfort the baby, you change the baby, you feed the baby. Even when your feelings are, I am so fed up with this. Am I making sense?
Yes, I don't have children, but I have a cat.
Well, then you have a small taste of this.
I have a cat, and I just bought a couch, the first couch in my life. And the cat likes the scratches.
Oh, you bought a scratching post.
No, I have 2 very large scratching posts.
Oh, but they like couches.
Yes. Yes. So I'm hearing you say
Yes.
it's not my intention. Yes, I would like to just open the door and let her go out. But I've been working with her. I put the scratching post right next to the couch, and you know what? She used it. She
Good.
actually used it. Yes.
That's good. But the point I'm getting at, yes, we want to pay attention to our feelings.
Mhm.
But these behaviors are to a large degree about action.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's like the kid who shoplifts and then justifies it. Well, I wasn't stealing from a little person. I was stealing from a corporation. They're terrible. They rip everybody off. They're the man. It's all right to steal from them. See, that's just simply a justification. The fact is you stole. You took something that didn't belong to you.
Mhm.
So many of these things, it's about paying attention to our actions. Feelings are very mercurial. Come and they go.
Mhm.
Very, very good question, Sonia. All right, going on.
Can I ask a follow-up to
Sure.
Sonia's question? You know, the whole thing about, so for sure, actions have known palpable consequences, but then repeated thought becomes a vasana. And some Hindu schools of thought actually think that is also karmic baggage.
It is, because most of the time repeated thoughts will impel us into action,
Whether in this lifetime or a future one.
most often in this life. Name me a repeated thought that hasn't impelled you into action.
Buying a car, but that's a different problem.
You keep thinking about it, you'll probably buy the car.
Yeah, but so to your point, though, I mean, that is, emotions are just like a complex of thoughts or like an outcome or shadow of thoughts, right?
Well, the relationship between agitation, thought, feeling, and action is a feedback loop.
Hmm.
They're all related. One's a subtle and the other's a grosser form of it. So, for example, going back to Sonia's example, if you become conflict avoidance and you, in fact, are angry at people, but you withdraw from conflict resolution, in time, you are probably going to have a rage event. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, all that stored resentment
Mhm.
comes out
Right.
anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So you look kind of pious on the outside, or you look detached at the least, and then you're just boiling on the inside.
Now, there are some exceptions to this. So, for example, the axe murderer and the soldier both kill people.
Mhm.
But the soldier who's doing it in service to his country
Mhm.
probably doesn't have as deep a karmic imprint as the axe murderer.
Mhm.
And we all know about, it's gone through different names. It's the shell shock, PTSD now,
Mhm.
that in fact these events do leave impressions on people. But it's a little bit different than an axe murderer or some domestic environment where someone is so full of rage and then they kill their spouse.
Yeah.
That's a little bit more upfront and personal. So there are shades of gray in this. All right, next idea.
Truth.
Truth, yes. We try to live a life of truthfulness. Now, the surface thing, I call it cash register honesty. Telling the truth. But how we lie to ourselves. Being able to move through layers of denial. I was talking with someone last week who used the term spiritual bypass. This is now a common term among the psychology community. I'm not quite sure what it means. But sometimes I think it means I endeavor to be a goody-goody and behave in a spiritual way and have yet to really do the deep inner work of telling the truth about my pain, my fears, the damage that's been done. Now, I'm not saying you have to go to the psychotherapist. If you're an effective meditator, that stuff will come up. You can run, but you can't hide. But truthfulness not only means not lying to other people, it also means being able to be very honest about our motivations. And they can be very deep. So one of the ones I had to look at, I thought I had strong Mumachukwa desire for liberation. But along with it was, if I'm holy, maybe then they'll love me. It's a deep issue around self-esteem. And I had to let that go. We join an ashram or a spiritual group. We think we want self-realization, and what we really want is community. We want connection. This is what Trungpa calls spiritual materialism. When the path itself starts to become another ego possession. So when we talk about truthfulness here, it's not just don't lie to other people. It's also don't lie to ourselves. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Absence of anger.
Yes. Yoga's definition of anger is thwarted desire or unmet expectation. Ego always points the finger at someone or something else. But if I'm angry, it's because I didn't get what I want. Or I had an expectation that someone would behave a particular way and they didn't. So always, I'm the one with the klesha, the affliction. So you want to see your anger, your resentment, as I call it, my heart's check engine light. You're driving your car and you have the check engine light comes on. That's a signal. Look under the hood, take it to the shop, find out what's wrong. If I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, that's my check engine light. Where do I have a desire, an attachment? Where do I have an expectation? Well, don't I have reasonable expectations of people? You can have all the expectations you want, but an expectation is a resentment under construction. That's all it is. We have to learn to let them go. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
You can't flip anger off like a light switch. Freedom from anger, freedom from resentment only comes through insight. Now, I will give you another tool. So someone has done something or said something that's hurt me very badly. This tool is to look to my own history. Where have I behaved in a similar way? Maybe not to that degree. And when I behaved in that way that was hurtful or harmful to others, why'd I do it? My experience, I've been hurt or I've been frightened. Those are the activators of my character defects, my kleshas, my doshas. So once I see, no, I'm not a monster, I was just hurt or frightened. And that triggered me, and I behaved badly because of it. Now I know why everybody else behaves badly. And that is the doorway to empathy, to compassion. And that becomes the doorway to forgiveness. They, like ourselves, are spiritually ill. They, like ourselves, are caught in the painful structures of ego. They, like ourselves, act in a way that hurts other people for the same reason I've done so. And if you think you've never hurt other people, then you really have an issue with truthfulness. That's the human condition. And when I can see that my bad behavior is about fear and about pain, then I understand everybody else's. This does not condone it, but allows me to start to let go deeply held resentment and anger. There's a wonderful saying that I love. Resentment is a poison that I brew for another and drink myself. And if you hang on to deeply rooted anger and resentment, it can make us very sick physically. Any thoughts on this? We
Jim?
have, yes,
Yeah, so you're saying if someone it was rude to me and that really got to me and I'm like, I don't want to talk to them again, I'm gonna give them the silent treatment. You're encouraging us to, okay, take a step back, think when I was rude to somebody and look to what was causing that. And most likely we will find in the abstract form anger and resentment that led to that feeling and hold space for that and understand that.
yeah. Why have you ever been rude to someone?
Of course.
Why were you rude to them?
I was upset about something else.
They hurt your feelings.
Yes.
Yeah. So if I'm capable of being a jerk because I've been hurt or I'm frightened. Now you know why they were rude to you. Now, we want to grant other people pity, tolerance, and patience. Now, this word pity, the dictionary definition of pity is genuine sorrow at the misfortune of others. It doesn't really carry connotations of condescension. In our modern parlance, it's begun to carry that. Oh, I pity you, you know. But the deeper understanding, the dictionary definition is genuine sorrow at the misfortune of others. So when we can begin to have some compassion for the sorrow of others, their pain, their hurts, their fears, and it can be very practical. Oftentimes, I was talking about this with someone else. Oftentimes, young people who are promoted into a managerial position without a lot of training think they need to manage through intimidation. Any of you ever had a manager like that? You know, it's annoying. But why do they do that? Because they're frightened. They feel out of control. And they think by exerting power and intimidation, that's going to solve the problem. It may work for a second or two, but over the long run, it never works. If you want to be a good manager, learn to be the servant leader. But once you can stand back and see, oh, yeah, my managers, they're acting like a jerk. But it's not really about me, it's their pain, their fear. If you can step back, then you can start to work with the energy a little bit. But if we're caught up in our anger, how could they have said that to me? They embarrassed me in the meeting in front of everybody. I'll never talk to them again. That's solving the problem. Is this making sense?
Yes, Jim.
Okay, next one.
Renunciation.
What's the words they use? Sannyasa or vairagya?
Tyag.
Tyaga, abandonment, literally. Okay, so how do we abandon stuff? There is a subtle difference between sannyasa and tyaga. Sannyasa is renunciation. My take on that is I make this choice. Okay, I'm going to give that up. Tyagaha, abandoning things. I always think of a child who's totally engrossed playing with their toys, and something draws their attention. Then they crawl over to the next thing that's drawing their attention. What's their relationship with the toy they were playing with before? Gone. They've abandoned it, or it's abandoned them. So the real key to renunciation is not so much what we turn from as what we turn to. Love God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's what the Master Jesus said was the culmination of all the law and the prophets. And if we focus on that, things of this world, our obsession for them, our addictive relationships with them, will fall away. Don't worry about it so much. Sometimes, if it's something gnarly, we may have to exercise real discipline. I'm thinking in mind the people I've worked with who are addicted to alcohol or drugs. You can't really move forward until you're committed to abstinence, yes. That may take some discipline in the beginning, with God's help. But by and large, being mindful, having the insight as to what the world can actually give us, and being very clear what it can't, is the key to renunciation. Any thoughts on this?
Yes. Can you elaborate more on?
Can you wait just a second? We've got a noisy car going by.
Okay.
It stopped at the light with a sound system. Come on, car. Go bye-bye.
Long red light.
There it goes. Okay, Sonia.
Yeah. So, could you please elaborate on what you said? You said you can't move forward till you're abstinent.
Well, I was just talking about really, really gnarly addictions that we have in the world.
Uh-huh.
So, like, for example, when I work with people who are alcoholic, to try to drink moderately is usually a failed experiment. Doesn't work. For them, abstinence is the only, effective treatment. Or let's say someone has celiac disease. Cutting down on gluten probably isn't going to be too effective.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be abstinent. So there are certain things for certain people where you have to do that. But let me give you an example. So, Somya, when you were young, did you go out to the clubs and dance and party?
Oh, yes.
Do you still?
On occasion.
Oh, good for you. But maybe less than you used to?
Oh, way less.
Yeah. So it's kind of left you more than you've left it.
Yes, it goes on leaving me more and more.
Yes.
And also coming to the Gita class also is helping. Yeah. Coming to the scripture classes, yes, helping. Yes. But I guess I was thinking that like there was something that's on top, something that's preventing you from moving forward. That's what I got stuck on.
Well, You have to figure that out for yourself. So let's take another one that I get from a lot of people. Let's say you grow up in Western culture and you grew up eating meat. And you've read a lot of yoga books that said, oh, you should become vegetarian. Now, I happen to agree with what Jesus said. He said, people are defiled far more by what comes out of their mouth than what goes into it. So what I say is continue to meditate, eat consciously, and listen to your body. And you may find, as you continue to meditate, that you desire a lighter diet. So it's by what you've turned from. When we commit ourselves to a spiritual life, we straighten out physically and mentally. It just kind of happens.
It happens because of what we're turning towards.
Yes.
That
doesn't mean that, I'll give you an example. So I was at a potluck and I happened to fix the Stouffer's vegetarian lasagna, which I have not done. I haven't cooked one of those probably in 15, 20 years. And I had one little square of it and I went, God, this is heavy. I don't think I'm going to do a Stouffer's lasagna again. You know, my body doesn't like that anymore. It was too heavy.
Yeah.
You know, a nice fresh salad sounds a lot better. But it's because, you know, we learn to listen to our body more.
Very true. Yes.
If you spend the whole day on the apps, you may feel, you know, scrambled brain after that, if you pay attention.
Yes.
Okay, we're running out of time. How many more do we have in these first two verses?
The first one's done. We are halfway through the second one.
Okay. Next idea.
Peacefulness.
Yes. So peacefulness is a function of making a decision. We want to make peace of mind our most prized possession. Absolutely nothing in this world is important enough for me to lose my serenity. Absolutely nothing. So we make the decision to make peace of mind my most prized possession. Next one.
Absence of crookedness.
Yes. We've talked about that part of this idea of straightforwardness, to live a life of integrity in the world. Don't lie, cheat, and steal. Pretty straightforward. Those of us who've studied Katha Upanishad, in the very beginning, why is Ch.16 so worried about his father? His father's performing a sacrifice where he gives his possessions away, except what he's giving away is his barren cows. They no longer can calve and produce milk, and they cost money to feed, so he's going to give them away. That's crookedness. That's what upsets Ch.16. Next idea.
Compassion to beings.
Yes. This icom pathos, to feel with other people. To feel with them. To understand the whole human condition of suffering. Life, the way most people live it, is suffering. That gives us the desire to do what we can to free other people from their bondage. And next one.
Non-covetousness.
Yes. To have contentment with what comes to us by our own efforts or by our karma, and not to be caught up in craving the possessions of other people, giving up jealousy, covetousness, envy, all of those. It's all pointless. Same idea. And are we, how many more in before we finish the verse?
3.
Okay, the next one.
Gentleness.
Yeah. Responding in the world with a gentle heart goes along with ahimsa. Trying to be kind, trying to be gentle. And next one.
Modesty.
Yeah. So we want to practice modesty or humility. And the key to this is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. The key to humility is to focus your attention on seva, service of other people. Don't toot your own horn. The last one.
Absence of fickleness.
So when you make a decision, practice. Thoughtful. Don't let your mind oscillate. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Check out the alternatives. Then sink deep. Make a choice. And then move forward. Don't second guess yourself. And always remember, a person proposes, but God disposes. Or as they say in the military, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. All we get is to plan a bit. Never know the outcome. Okay, we've gone a little bit over. Is that verses 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are deep. They are echoed in the yamas and niyamas. They're always good moral precepts, qualities of action, as well as head and heart, that we're invited to cultivate. Not something we achieve overnight, but it's a very useful list of character traits. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha.